All right, Friday on the Krug Show. Chase Sr.'s in the house. Got a lot to talk about. Niners, Gus Bradley, Eagles and Chiefs, Super Bowl 59. Chase is on the road. Let's go. All right, welcome to the Krug Show. Hope everybody's having a great February the 7th, 11:03 West Coast. What does that mean? I guess that's 2:03 East Coast and 1:03 in the Central Time Zone, where Chase Sr. joins us via his vehicle. But he's not driving, everybody, not driving. He's riding along. An incredible sunroof, the moon roof in the rental. The road from New Orleans back to Texas after what was probably a big week for Chat Sports, but welcome to the Krug Show. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out, Emeryville, Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California. Thanks to Anthony Catania at 831-521-5264. And let's not forget Mancini's. Mancini's is a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. They offer a 120-night guarantee, a range of brands and price points. I'm loving my bed. With Mancini's, you get free next-day delivery. So click the link below. Go to sleepworld.com. Find a bed that works for you. Whether you shop online or visit in-store, use the code KRUG10, and you'll get 10% off. That's KRUG10, K-R-U-E-G 10. 10% off in-store or online at sleepworld.com. All right, the story of the morning, and we titled it as such. The 49ers are hiring Gus Bradley to their defensive staff. Chase, what do you think? I mean, Gus Bradley did not do a very good job as a head coach in Jacksonville, but he also is pretty knowledgeable on this defense, and obviously Robert Saleh wanted him. What do you think of the hire?
I like it, and it's not like the 49ers are bringing in Gus Bradley to be the defensive coordinator. They're bringing him in to be an assistant coach on this team, and he was the DC for the Legion of Boom days, legendary tenure with the Seattle Seahawks, and then he was able to use that tenure under Pete Carroll to get the head coaching job with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and obviously it didn't work out for him there, and he's been at DC multiple stops. We're talking about a very experienced and knowledgeable defensive coordinator in the past, and now he's going to come in under Robert Saleh and be an assistant. And when you have a defensive coordinator like Saleh with the chops that he has the ability to bring in talented coaches to his coaching staff. And so I think this makes the Niners coaching staff better. It gives it a little bit more depth. It's a coach who Saleh is familiar with. He was the linebackers coach under Bradley with the Jags from 2014 to 2016. And it's funny, last year, it's the Niners hiring Nick Sorensen as the DC, and then the 49ers bring in Brandon Staley, and that caused a lot of people to kind of lose it a little bit, given how Staley's tenure went with the Los Angeles Chargers, a little bit of an analytical nerd. But now you bring in Saleh, the fan base is really pumped up. I think you get the best defensive mind on the coaching market coordinator-wise, and now he's starting to round out his staff with a talented guy like Bradley, who's very experienced. And the defense that he ran last year with the Indianapolis Colts wasn't great. He was let go, parted ways with Shane Steichen. He's feeling a lot of pressure with how disappointing the Colts season was last year, but it's important to emphasize that Bradley is not coming to the Niners to be a DC. He's going to be an assistant, and he's a very good assistant at that.
What do you think? There's any free agents that come with him from Indy? I mean, they do have Jannard Avery, the former Eagle, he's been around the league in a number of spots. They also have Kenny Moore, who Kenny Moore is one of the great young nickel corners in the game, but he also makes a boatload of cash, or he probably will get a boatload of cash in free agency. Do you see any natural fits with Bradley coming over? And what do you think he does? Do you think he's Do you think he's like coaches linebackers, or is that Johnny Holland sticks around and he's more like a Brandon Staley kind of special projects? I mean, what role do you think he mans?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what type of role that he has, because I think the linebacking core has been really good during this tenure. And so I wouldn't want to see a coaching change there. I think it's more of that Brandon Staley type of role. And Gus Bradley's probably looking at it as such. I didn't get a defensive coordinator job. He's definitely not going to become a head coach once again. He didn't want to be jobless for the 2025 season. So why not follow Saleh, help him out, be an assistant, help him oversee things, and he can also help out with some of the finer nuances on the defensive side of the football. As for free agents who could follow Bradley to the Niners, I really don't know any that come to mind who were under him with the Indy Colts. I'm more so looking at some free agents potentially to follow Saleh from the New York Jets. A player like Jamie Sherwood, I think, would be a fantastic addition to this team. And if you can find a way to have Fred Warner, who's still playing at a defensive player of the year type of level, he comes back off that ankle injury. He's not slowing down. If you're able to bring back Drake Greenlaw on a cheap, affordable contract, Saleh's been adamant that he wants him back, and it gives Greenlaw familiarity with the scheme, familiarity with the coaching staff, and an opportunity to stay healthy and increase his value going into 2026. And then you bring in an athletic linebacker like Jamie Sherwood, that really completes your linebacking core. So Colts players following Bradley, not sure about that. I look more at Jets players following Robert Saleh because they really like playing under him. If you do want to have a Colts connection here during the midst of this conversation, do you look at bringing back a player like DeForest Buckner? I know he's been a fan favorite since the Niners shipped him out. They've never been able to replace him, and I think that's coincided with some bad defensive production, especially against the run. Buckner's getting a little bit older. He is expensive, but he's still a really, really good player. And I don't think that's likely, but maybe it's something to monitor a little bit.
You know, one guy who's in Indy last year that could be with the Niners this year is Joe Flacco. A lot of people talking about Flacco. What do you think of that idea? I mean, you know, I loved him at Delaware. What an incredible arm. I think he's one of the greatest arms I've ever seen. Obviously, He beat the Niners right there in New Orleans in front of my eyes in Super Bowl 47, playing incredible that year. That was his MVP year. Do you like Flacco? I've also heard Case Keenum's name. Some people are floating rookies, the names of rookies. What do you think of Flacco being the maybe a Flacco, Purdy, Mordecai quarterback room? Does that intrigue you in any way?
While we're on this topic too, this just came to mind. Look at what Gus Bradley did last year with Samuel Womack, right? I mean, the Niners let Samuel Womack go. He goes to Indy. He actually played very well. And so that's what quality coaching does. That's, I think, what the Niners missed last year was the defense was discombobulated. They were sloppy. They weren't well coached. But with Saleh, I think it's going to lead to better scheme, better execution, player development, and just putting players in a position to succeed. Bradley did that with a player like Samuel Womack, so that should get people excited too. As for Joe Flacco, I talked about him on the show a couple of weeks ago, and you're right. What a great career that he was able to have. And I remember when he was coming out of Delaware, because I grew up right outside of the Philadelphia area, and Delaware was that FCS program that was a program that was always in contention at that D1 AA level. And when Flacco was starting to come up, there was a lot of buzz around his name at that time as this large in stature quarterback with a really strong arm, had a great career there. The Baltimore Ravens take him, and look, during the peak and the height of that Tom Brady, Bill Belichick dynasty, the one team in the AFC that was the consistent thorn in the sides of the Patriots, it was the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, they had a great defense, but Joe Flacco was also clutch in a lot of those playoff games. And I got to be honest, you mentioned Super Bowl 47, and I was in New Orleans all week, and you saw a lot of the Super Bowl history from the Big Easy here of all of the games that have taken place over time. Obviously, the Niners had success playing in New Orleans in a Super Bowl, but they also lost that game to the Baltimore Ravens in 2012. That playoff run by Flacco was one of the best playoff runs that we've ever seen. I think he threw 11 touchdowns to 1 interception during that run, and it was a Ravens team that got hot. Now, obviously, we are very far removed away from Flacco being that guy, more of a backup now, but in 2023, I was so impressed with how he played as a starter when he came in for Deshaun Watson once he suffered that shoulder injury with the Cleveland Browns. The Browns got really hot down the stretch. Flacco played very well under Kevin Stefanski. and the Browns got hot. They made it to the playoffs. They lost in the wild card round to the Houston Texans, but he played very well. Didn't play as well with the Indianapolis Colts this year. What he would bring the Niners is a player who's seen it all, who is very experienced, very well accomplished. I just don't really want to see the Niners bring in a player that old. I'd actually rather see them draft a player on day 2 or day 3, start to develop that player and see what he could become down the road. I think that Brock Purdy, of course, is going to get that contract extension being down here in New Orleans. That was a big topic of conversation outside of Myles Garrett and the Cooper Kupp trade stuff. But Brock Purdy has had a couple of arm injuries throughout his career, and so you need some insurance there. And I guess the Niners are looking at it like, hey, if Brock Purdy gets hurt, we can turn the keys to a veteran. We know that he can run this system. He can play point guard with all the weapons that we have on this team. But I'd rather look at a player day 2, day 3, like a Kyle McCord, like a Jackson
Syracuse.
Dart. McCord, yeah, Kyle McCord out of Syracuse, Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. I really like how Will Howard played under Chip Kelly in the college football playoff. I thought that he was excellent. The thing is, it's a very light quarterback class in the 2025 draft. And so teams might overdraft at that position, causing those players to go earlier. But those are some names that I like for the Niners to draft day 2, day 3, who Kyle Shanahan can develop over the next few years instead of going with a player who is north of 40 years old.
You know, it's and a quarterback is that position where, man, you just never know. You just never know. Like, I personally think the Eagles have something in Tanner McKee. But you know, I mean, no, who thought that on draft day? You know, not too many people. But I thought he outplayed Pickett in the brief, snippets that I saw from both those guys this year. The other guy that I guess maybe probably should be at least mentioned is, Gus Bradley's kid, I think, is a decent quarterback. Carter Bradley. I know he was on the Raiders, like he maybe practice squad or maybe third string with the Niners. Try to get Carter Bradley away from the Raiders. I don't know. I mean, it's a long shot, but obviously we know Gus is going to be like, yeah, take a look at Carter. And Carter Bradley's not bad. He was good at South Alabama. He's a big kid, 6'3", got a strong arm. So it'll be interesting to see who that third quarterback is. I kind of agree with you after watching some of the Mobile Senior Bowl. You may want to just take a flyer on somebody in that day 3. You know, whether Tyler Shugg or whatever from who's been everywhere, Oregon and Texas Tech, Louisville. I kind of like Riley Leonard, even though he doesn't have much of an arm. We'll see. We'll see quarterback wise in the draft. One of the things I want to share the screen here. By the way, before I share the screen, you had a tweet the other day about what would be your ideal free agent class. I went to go look for it last night in one of the other live streams I was doing. And dude, you have put out so many tweets this week. It was like so far buried. I'm like, dude, I know he tweeted this and it was only a few days ago, but that's how busy you were in New Orleans this week with Eagles Twitter. Who was on your short list? I know DJ Jones and I remember Javon Holland. And I think Drew Dahlman, right? Who else was on your free agent guest list or get list for the Niners? And do you think that they will be that active in free agency?
I do think they're going to be active because I don't think that you make Robert Saleh the highest paid defensive coordinator in the game, or at least top of the market as far as the salary, and then you say, all right, this is going to be a reset year. I think that you hire Saleh to go all in for 2025, knowing that you have a pretty good defensive core intact. You have Nick Bosa, you have Fred Warner, you have Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa. That's a grouping of players for San Francisco that I like the foundation of. And so if you're going to go out there, pay Saleh all that money, knowing that he might not be here this time next year or in 2 years, and you're just content with being a mediocre team, that just doesn't align for me, especially when Jed York, according to Tim Kawakami, was putting on the full court press for Robert Saleh as well. I think the Niners going into 2025, and I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but it does have to do with conversation, right? I think that they're going to get healthier on offense. I think that Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy can rebound. I think that with those players getting healthier, it's going to allow the offense to get back on track. With Robert Saleh, I think the defense is improved. With Brant Boyer, I think the special teams unit is improved, and you have a fourth place schedule. So I don't think the gap is that wide for San Francisco to get back into playoff contention here. And so that's why I think they're going to be active in free agency, to circle back to your original question. And obviously, they're not going to sign every player who I listed, but they do
Sure.
have a decent amount of cap space. They can open up some more with some contract restructures and contract extensions. If you trade a player, cut a player, that's another avenue in which you can free up some cap dollars. And so my perfect free agency plan, at least the players who I'd be interested in, and these are external free agents. I'm not talking about the players who are on the Niners roster or were in 2024. You need to improve the offensive line, right? And so I think the best option out there to do that is at the center spot with Drew Dahlman. He is a scheme fit. He played under Zach Robinson with the Falcons last year. Robinson's a Sean McVay guy, worked under him. He's really good and mobile, getting out in space on pull blocks, and he's a great run blocker, and he's a pretty good pass protector as well. And the 49ers have been willing to invest in the center position. They paid Weston Richburg a lot of money. Unfortunately, his career was cut short due to injury. They paid Alex Mack after Weston Richburg, and then they went the cheap route with Jake Brendel. You can't do that any longer. And I know that you and I have talked about this. The great Brian Baldinger, who I saw grinding down here in New Orleans, he always says, if you don't have a good center, you don't have a good offensive line. And the center is responsible for so much: slides, protections, communications, helping the quarterback audible, see things. Like, that's the heartbeat of your offensive line. And so I think Dahlman is a really good fit. I think that you can get him for a pretty affordable price. He's only 26 years old. Of course, some cool nuggets that his dad played for the Niners. He grew up in Salinas, California. So I like that move on offense. And then defensively, if you're going to continue to run this wide nine, you need to be better along the interior defensive line of stopping the run. And DJ Jones was a former Niner who flourished toward the end of his tenure, used that to get a bag with Denver, signed a 3-year, $30 million contract. And last year, he was number 2 in run stop win rate among defensive tackles. And so that helps you stopping the run at that defensive tackle spot. I think he's frankly somewhat of an underrated pass rushing defensive tackle too. So
I
you
do
check
too.
off offensive line there. You go left guard, right tackle in the draft. Then you go defensive tackle with DJ Jones. I'd try to sign Jamian Sherwood, who played very well under Robert Saleh. That could continue. And then if you have that linebacking trio of Greenlaw, Warner, Sherwood, you shore up that second level. And then I would look at a player like DJ Reed. I know he could get a lot of money, but he played very well under Robert Saleh, thrived with the New York Jets. And then on that back end, this might be a luxury pickup. And it's a player who you might not go after if you believe that you can get Jair Brown back on track to pair him with Malik Mustafa. But Javon Holland, I think, is an excellent safety. And I think that he'd be a really good player on that back end, just a playmaker at that third level.
Yeah, no, I think those are all really, really good names. I want to share the screen. Hopefully you can hear this. This is Kay Adams with Debo earlier today, I believe. And Debo's like, basically, she asked him about his contract status and is there anything going on? And he's like, there's nothing going on. Listen to this. Tell me what you think.
Is taking over. Fred said he would give some of his salary for Miles. George then said, whoa, 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 whoa. And
you're speaking for yourself at this point.
Fred volunteered George's wallet as well. How much are you willing to put in for the GoFundMe for Myles Garrett?
Whew. I mean, if it was 100% chance that I'm going to win the Super Bowl, then we can have that conversation.
So
but nothing is
$0.
guaranteed. Correct.
Yeah. What's going on in your future? What do I need to know?
Nothing's going on right now.
Niners have John Lynch on line 1. We got a lot of things to figure out. We talking? You're happy? You're good?
Good.
Okay.
All right, so nothing's going on right now. What is going on right now with Debo? We know Shanahan likes him, but at the same time, we also know that there's an awful lot of trade rumors around him. Man, Chase, I got to be honest, man. If the Niners want to get back to the Super Bowl and they're not going to have much, they don't know what they're going to get out of Ayuk next year, and if they're not going to have Debo, it seems like receiver is suddenly very, very vitally important in this offseason, and it's not a great receiver draft, and it's not a great receiver free agent class. So What do you make of the receiver position and Debo? What is he kind of is he going to be on the team this year? You expect him to be dealt during the draft? I can't expect, even if he was dealt, that he would net more than a 5th-round pick with his money. What's your best guess as far as how the Niners approach Debo? Is he back? And then you saw the T. Higgins rumors, and at first I discounted that. But you know what? The more I look at this class, I'm thinking if they're going to be a decent player, a decent team next year, they're going to have another receiver. And I don't know if they can trade for a Garrett Wilson or sign a T. Higgins. But I'm looking at this draft, and I did not see a receiver in Mobile that could be, a difference maker for the 49ers. If you need a receiver this year, you're going to be out of luck.
Yeah, it's a pretty light wide receiver class as far as the NFL draft goes. Ted McMillan might be the top wide receiver out of Arizona, and I like him as a player. I would compare him as a pro comp to a Drake London, big in size, but I worry about taking wide receivers that early because of their lack of separation. And so then you're having to rely on those wide receivers who are big and physical to win a lot of those 50-50 matchups, whereas I'd prefer a wide receiver who has a little bit more speed. And then in free agency, it's T. Higgins, and then everybody else is far beneath him. But because of that, and because there's not a lot of good wide receivers in free agency, Higgins could make $25 to $30 million. And are the Niners going to be able to afford that? Do they want to pay that type of salary? And I think this is part of the reason why Dan Orlovsky had mentioned the Niners as a Cooper Kupp destination, because he brought up the point that you brought up. Brandon Ayuk, when is he going to come back? And when he comes back, what is he going to look like? He completely shredded his knee. That was a bad injury. And so let's just say that he doesn't come back until week 6, week 8, right? You're looking at a wide receiver room of Ricky Pearsall, unproven, Debo Samuel coming off an awful year. That photo of him in the Eagles jersey, maybe it was a bad angle, but he was looking a little bit out of shape. You have Jawan Jennings, who is going into the final year of his contract. He's really not a separator. You have Jacob Cowing. And so you do become a little bit light at that wide receiver position. Ideally for the Niners, that's a position that you could target 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and you get a decent player. Maybe San Francisco is banking on Pearsall, working off the momentum of how he ended his rookie year, which I got to be honest, he looked pretty good. I'll give him credit for that. And Jacob Cowing, I think, has a little bit of wiggle. I think he has some explosiveness, and I think that he can be a little bit of a gadget guy. But yeah, wide receiver is a little bit of a sneaky question mark for San Francisco. And Kay Adams asked Debo straight up, what's your future? He said, I don't know. Going into the final year of his contract, they've tinkered with that deal a little bit. So I'm not sure if he has no guaranteed money left or what the cap ramifications are. I do have to refresh my memory on that. But he's a player who I have brought up the idea of moving off of him to kind of reset, get younger, move off of that salary. But I don't know if the Niners are in a position to do that. Plus, you factor in the Kyle Shanahan loyalty there and him really liking Debo and just being boys with him, and maybe sometimes overdoing that by force feeding it a little bit too much in the biggest of games, especially in the Super Bowl last year.
I want to play a cut from you from Gruden. This was with Brad Graham talking about Purdy. This is pretty good. This is Gruden down at Radio Row talking Purdy. Here it is.
There's a lot of different opinions and evaluations on what Brock Purdy is and he isn't. As a coach, offensive guru, what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy?
Well, they should build a statue of him in San Francisco. He covered their ass, man. They gave up 3 first-round draft choices to get a guy they got rid of. You guys have him in Dallas. And this guy's the last pick of the draft. He's taking you to the Super Bowl. He's taking you to the brink. He deserves to get paid, and I'll just leave it at that.
You gotta love Gruden. I'll just leave it at that. He's got a nice smile on his face. Gruden, I guess, is already kind of making his way back. What do you? Gruden is saying the part that like Niner fans don't really say, which is, let's be honest, would Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch even have jobs if it wasn't for Brock Purdy, right? So, what do you view as the deadline, Chase, for getting Brock signed? Do you see a deadline? I'm thinking maybe the start of free agency would be the time I'd like to have it done by.
Yeah, and by the way, I love the authenticity that John Gruden brings.
Your audio is bugging out.
He's so entertaining.
Oh, there we go. Actually, it's a little bit better now. Go ahead.
We better now?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. It's been bugging out in the last 30 seconds or so. It was really great at the start, but
okay.
Maybe you guys are getting further out of town. So, but what did you think of what he said about Purdy there?
Well, it's true. I mean, the Niners really got lucky because can you imagine if you give up those 3 first-round picks, you move up for Trey Lance, and in hindsight, they never really trusted him from the get-go. And it was a risky pick at the time because he had 1 year of production at North Dakota State, and he was really good in that 1 year, but it was 1 year of production at a lower level, playing for North Dakota State. Then he had that COVID year later. He played 1 game, and so he was so inexperienced when the Niners took him with all of this raw talent, all of this ability, but it was a risk that ended up proving true because those inexperienced questions were certainly real. And you saw it right from the jump. Kyle Shanahan just didn't trust him, and they weren't really willing to give him a long leash. And so he ended up being a big bust for San Francisco. And can you imagine if they didn't take Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, where they would be right now? The worst place that you can be in the NFL, and that's quarterback purgatory. So they take Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, final pick of the 2022 draft. Lance gets hurt early in 2022. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. Brock Purdy, who you and I were raving about during the preseason, saying they have to keep him on the 53 because he's not going to clear waivers if you let him go to try to bring him back to the practice squad. He comes late in the year, and he comes through with just some awesome performances. Wins a couple of playoff games, injures his elbow in that NFC Championship game. Then last year, with really no off season, he's top 5 in MVP voting, and he played at such a high level. The processing, the touch, the anticipation, some of the extracurricular, out of structure, improvisational plays, he was tremendous, and the numbers back that up. The eye back that up. This year in 2024, there was just so much instability around him. From Brandon Ayuk not being around early, Trent Williams not being around, all of the injuries, not having Christian McCaffrey, players in and out of the lineup. He didn't play his best football. Kyle Shanahan didn't coach his best football. The defense and special teams let him down. It was all around just a bad year for San Francisco. But with all of that being said, even with him playing at that B-, C+ level for long stretches of 2024, you know the type of quarterback that Brock Purdy is, in my opinion. You know what he can continue to be for your team. Now, he's going to need some parts around him, but he's proven when he has those parts, when the Niners are healthy, he can be elite. This team can be a Super Bowl contender. And so Gruden's right. Like John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they might not have a job if they didn't land Purdy, because if they didn't hit on Purdy, didn't have him, who would the quarterback option be? And if that quarterback option wasn't there, you're looking at a couple of really rough seasons for San Francisco potentially.
Your audio's a little choppy, so we'll finish with this last one. But give me your thoughts on the Super Bowl. There's so many great Warren Sharp stats that are really quite revealing. Spags has done an incredible job of shutting down the Niner run game and the Eagle run game in the last 2 Super Bowls. I definitely think that this Eagles offense it's not as good as it was 2 years ago, but it has Saquon Barkley. So in one hand, you've got Barkley, but it's not, but like Hurts in the passing game is not the same. And then, but then defensively, I think this Eagles defense is quite a bit better with Fangio than they were in this game 2 years ago. So I really like the Eagles early in the week. I'm getting a little cold feet as we get closer to kickoff because all these numbers seem to favor Spags and what he can do and all the, he's just a miracle worker as far as his defensive game day preparation. It's amazing. If I had to say one way or another, I'd probably go under because I like both defenses. But even that, I don't feel great about. Give me your breakdown of this game. What do you think we're going to see? Are the Eagles going to be able to run the ball? Are the Eagles going to struggle to run the ball? What are the key elements of this game?
Yeah, a couple of key elements of this game. The Eagles' offensive line, Jalen Hurts, Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni, are going to have answers against the potent, exotic, very creative, and hard to defend Steve Spagnuolo blitzes. And this year, Jalen Hurts has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL going up against the blitz. I will say, though, this year, the Eagles have been a running team. Saquon Barkley's run for more than 2,000 yards. He's 30 yards away from taking down Terrell Davis's record for the most rushing yards in a single season. And they've leaned on him and their offensive line. That is their identity. And so it would be malpractice, in my opinion, if you went away from your identity and your strengths and you became pass happy just because you want to see what Jalen Hurts can do and you're paying him $50+ million. That's one element of it. The other is that when he's been asked to throw, he's had some pretty good performances. Against the Commanders in the NFC Championship game, I thought he was terrific. Back when there were questions about the passing game, he comes out the following week and he carved up the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they were playing at a really high level at that point. And so I think when Hurts is asked to handle the passing, he's able to find success. But how does he and this offense handle the blitz? The other thing with Kansas City, too, is that they're number 9 in yards per carry given up, number 9 in rushing yards per game given up, too. They're so sound in gaps. They're so sound with tackling, and they're really good against the run on top of all of those blitzes that Spags is going to call. But sometimes that hasn't mattered with Philadelphia this year because of their offensive line and just the special innate ability of Saquon, patience, explosion, home run ability. Now, I don't think he's going to have 270+ yard touchdown runs like he's done a couple of times this year against Kansas City. But I think the benchmark is if he rushes for more than 100 yards, I think the Eagles win. If he's under 100 yards, I think the Chiefs win. You bring up the Eagles defense, they are so much better, more athletic, and talented than they were 2 years ago. And I think the Chiefs offense is a little bit worse than they were 2 years ago. So I think both of these teams really match up well against one another. We could talk about this matchup for an hour, but because they are so close in talent and success, and both of these teams are so well coached, I think this is a game that's going to be decided by razor margins. And so it could come down to a missed PAT, a missed field goal. Jake Elliott's been very spotty. Harrison Butker has been awesome. It could come down to a big special teams play. And we know that the Chiefs have come through with big special teams plays in the Super Bowl against the Niners and against the Eagles a couple of years ago. It could come down to a turnover here or there, because when you have two teams who match up so well against one another, that's when the margins are so thin. And so I like the Eagles just because I think their talent can win out, but the Chiefs are more talented at quarterback and head coach, and sometimes that's the difference. And the Chiefs have won 17 straight one-score games. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo are so clutch in those big moments. Will the Eagles rise up and come through with the big play, or will they fold like other teams have against Kansas City? It really is a fascinating matchup for so many reasons.
The big question I have is, does Spags, who, against the Niners, it's like, hey, we'll just play a lot of man coverage, and the Niners struggle against man coverage, and that will be enough. They play the 10th highest rate of man-to-man coverage in the league. Jalen Hurts, though, has an NFL best 9.7 yards per attempt against man coverage this year. You can't really play man coverage against Jalen Hurts and just expect to shut him down. He actually does quite well against man coverage. So what do you expect? Does Spags throw a bunch of exotic zones and different looks and blitz, try to come up with exotic pressure packages off of zone coverages? Because I don't think you can play the Eagles the same way you play the Niners. I don't think it's going to work.
So A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley are really good man beaters. But
Yeah.
This is also what makes Spags so brilliant, is that you can look at trends and you can look at data as far as what he's done all year. He's had 2 weeks to prepare, and he will unveil something that the Eagles have never seen before and give them a new look that could catch them off guard. And so adjustments in this game for that reason and more also going to be big in this game as well.
I like Dallas Goedert to have a big game. I think Goddard's going to be big in this game. Something tells me Goddard gets 6 or 7 catches, 60, 70 yards, and a touchdown. Kansas City's defense has allowed the most yards per target to tight ends, and Goddard's healthy. So I like Goddard Sunday.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, Goddard has been a really clutch playoff performer for the Eagles. He's actually number 1 in receiving yards in franchise history in the postseason, and he played very well against Kansas City 2 years ago. He had nearly 70 yards and came through on a bunch of big plays in that game, including a couple of big third down conversions to move the chains. Another player to look out for is Devontae Smith. In 3 games against Spags, he's had at least 99 yards in every one of those games. Very slippery, really good route runner. And that's another reason why I like the Eagles. Like, if Jalen Hurts plays like he did in the NFC Championship game, they become so multiple diverse and they become so difficult to defend. Because if you blitz, what's the way to beat the blitz? Running the ball. If you try to drop back in certain coverages, like you just mentioned, Jalen Hurts can find success. If you want to go man, they can beat you with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. If you try to load the box and Hurts is on his game, then they can throw it. If they spread you out and they're averaging 6.9 yards per carry out of 11 personnel in quarters 1 through 3 in the playoffs, shout out to Warren Sharp for that. That allows you to have 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, a back. They spread you out, and then they become difficult to defend because they're taxing. You don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to run it? Or are they going to throw it? And so that's why Hurts is so key in this game, because if he's on his game, the Eagles become so difficult to stop, so difficult to defend with all of that talent and the number 1 overall defense in the NFL. And by the way, the Eagles are plus 10-0 in the margin in the playoffs. So they've played clean football and forcing a lot of giveaways.
Chase, we'll let you go, bro. Have a great, safe drive back to Texas. We've been enjoying streaming with you throughout the year. Tell people what you got cooking on Super Bowl Sunday so they can all roll over to Chat Sports and check out what you're doing.
Yeah, apologies if the connection was in and out. We're kind of exiting. We're entering 6. But, yeah, appreciate everybody who tuned into this Friday spot all throughout the season. Definitely want to continue to keep it moving. I think Krug and I do a good job with one another doing the show every week. As far as on Super Bowl Sunday, I'm going to be going live for a watch party. And so we'll be live 2 hours before the game. We're going to preview the game, all of the keys, matchups to watch, and then I'll play some of the interviews that we're going to gather all throughout the week. And during the game, I'll be shitting a brick and the pressure will be on, and it's going to be a pretty intense game. We'll see what happens and end that Chiefs quest for a 3. But I think it down to the wire, and we'll see if the Eagles are able to make the big play and slay the dragon, or if the Chiefs win their 3rd straight.
Thanks, brother. Have a safe drive back to Texas. Thanks for jumping in, and enjoy Super Bowl Sunday. And everybody go check out Chat Sports on Super Bowl Sunday. Chase's live watch party is must see internet. Chase, have a great rest of your Friday, man. Thanks for jumping in.
You as well. Take care, Larry. See ya.
There you go. The great Chase Sr. in the house. And sorry he was a little choppy there, guys. We tried to make our best effort to make it not choppy, but unfortunately he's in a car and it's just very difficult. But hopefully you got some of that. A couple more thoughts before we get out of here on the Super Bowl and just some of the interesting matchups. One, I think it's interesting, is that Spags has been so good at shutting down the run game. He held the Niners last year to 3.6 yards per carry. The Niners' longest run in the Super Bowl last year was 11 yards. 2 years ago, Spags held the Eagles to 2.6 yards per carry. And their top running back was held to 16 total yards on 7 rushes. Now, the Eagles have added Saquon Barkley. And that's the wrinkle. And he's a hell of a player, and I don't think Kansas City can totally shut him down. So I'm really eager to see that angle. Can the Eagles run the ball against the Chiefs in this game? If they can't, I think I like Kansas City to win and maybe even win big. Now, I do expect Mahomes to show up with a chip on his shoulder for finishing whatever 6th or whatever it was, 5th in the MVP voting behind Josh Allen, Lamar, Barkley, Burrow, and Jared Goff, despite the fact that, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in pro football. I think Fangio's defense in the red zone could be a major factor. If you look at Kansas City, the percentage of drives to reach the red zone, 37% against Fangio, and yet the touchdown rate inside the red zone is 37% against Fangio, 62% against every other defense that Kansas City's gone against. So, can Fangio be the difference in this game? I mean, that's really the question. I don't think Saquon Barkley is going to do a lot as a receiver in this game. He's only averaged 2.5 catches, or he's only topped 2.5 catches once since week 12 and only 5 times all season. So, the under could be a risky proposition on Saquon Barkley receptions if the Eagles fall behind, because they'll get into a pass mode, and they'll probably have to throw it to him quite a bit. As far as injuries, the Eagles' offensive line is a little dinged up. Cam Jurgens has got a back injury. Landon Dickerson's got a knee injury. They didn't practice during the bye week, but they don't carry any injury designation into this game. Brandon Graham's got the torn triceps, so he's still a question mark for Philly. As far as Kansas City, they roll into this game fully healthy. All 53 players practiced fully before the AFC Championship game. McCole Hardman is out. He's on the IR. Sky Moore is doubtful. But other than those two receivers, Kansas City's a full go. It is interesting to see like how much Kansas City will blitz Hurts. Jalen Hurts was blitzed on 29.9% of his dropbacks this year, 6th highest blitz percentage in the league. So the Eagles are 6th in the NFL in ESPN's pass block win rate stat, and they're 6th in the Pro Football Focus pass blocking grade. 16 of the 19 sacks Hurts has taken has come when he's blitzed and he's held the ball too long. So when he holds the ball for more than 2.5 seconds and he's being blitzed, that's usually when teams have the best success against him. One guy to look for on Kansas City side is Xavier Worthy. His stock has been going up. His target share the last 5 games has been 29%, 27%, 24%, 25%, and 28%. 62% of his receiving yards are coming after the catch, though. And the Eagles allow just 3.9 yards after the catch to wide receivers. That's 3rd best in the NFL. So there's a chance that Worthy is going to be not much of a factor. The other key factor I think is going to be interesting. How much does Andy Reid care about offensive balance, and how many plays will he give to his running backs? Only 3% of their explosive plays come from the running backs. It's worst in the NFL. And if you look at it, the Kansas City's got 2 key running backs. The NFL average is 4.4 yards per carry. Pacheco has gone under the NFL average in 6 of his last 7 games. Kareem Hunt's gone under the league average in 7 of his last 9 games. So how many running plays does Andy Reid call? Because they're kind of wasted plays. They're kind of just like, hey, let's just take a timeout from passing and give Mahomes a little bit of a blow by running the ball. Kansas City is only running as just a little bit of a change up to their passing game. They're not really achieving true balance. So, and then, how much can Spags take away Hurts's first read and make him hold the ball? There's no question, if you look at Philadelphia this year, they've allowed the number 2 highest pressure rate in the league, despite the fact that they're number 6 as far as best offensive line and pass blocking. So why is it that they're number 2 in pressure rate against? Well, it's because Hurts holds the ball. The last time he played Spags was 2023, and Kansas City in that game got 5 sacks and forced him into a pick and allowed 0 passing touchdowns. So they really had Hurts' number in the last matchup. You heard Chase say, watch out for Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith has been really good against Kansas City. He caught 7 balls for 100 yards in one of his recent games against them. The other game against them, he had 6 catches for 99 yards, and he's out-targeted A.J. Brown in both games. So Devontae Smith played 46% of the time in the slot when Brown and Goddard were healthy. Brown and Goddard are healthy. So we'll see. 52% of catches by wide receivers against the Chiefs come via the slot. So, a lot of people talk about A.J. Brown a lot, but, man, Devontae Smith might be the key factor in this game. The other thing I think is going to be interesting is what kind of coverage does Fangio throw at Patrick Mahomes? Mahomes is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL against cover 4 or cover 6 on third downs. Warren Sharp outlined this in a pretty lengthy article this week, and it just showed how it kind of plays in the hands of Fangio and the Eagles defense. So now Mahomes is 8-0 against Fangio, but he's only got 10 touchdown passes, and he's got no more than 2 in any individual game. He's thrown 30% of his passes at or behind the line of scrimmage, and the Eagles are allowing the fewest yards after catch at 4.7 yards per completion. So that could play into Philadelphia's hands. So to me, it seems like one of the main questions is what happens on third downs when the Eagles are on the field. That's the one thing. I mean, it's that could be the real question is third downs for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes on third down against cover 6 and quarters is like middle of the pack. Or actually, he's 42nd in first down rate, 34th in EPA per attempt, and 33rd success rate. But against all other coverages without blitz, he's number 1 in first down rate. He's number 2 in EPA per attempt, and he's number 3 in success rate. So, exactly what kind of coverages does Fangio throw at Mahomes could have a big determining factor in this game as well. The other thing I think is kind of interesting is that if you look at the strength of schedule stats and the final end of the season strength of schedule stats for pass offenses, the Eagles' offense has played the number 1 easiest schedule of pass defenses this year. So, yeah, the Eagles have a good passing offense, but they've gone up against the easiest schedule of pass defenses this year. Now, the Chiefs' pass defense has been tested. They're number 4 in the most dropbacks against a top 10 pass offense. Kansas City's pass defense on those 248 dropbacks was number 1 in EPA per attempt. So that might be an angle right there. The Chiefs have a really good pass defense, and the Eagles' offense has gone up against the easiest pass defenses all year, and now it's a major, major step up in class going up against Kansas City's pass defense. That's an angle to watch. The thing about this game is that I don't think Kansas City can run except for like a little bit of a changeup here and there. I don't think they're going to have success running. So I think they're going to be passing. I think the Eagles are going to have some success running Saquon Barkley. I kind of think I like the under in this game just because I think both teams will mix in enough runs to make it a low-scoring game. I like the Eagles' defense to slow down Mahomes and totally take away their run game and kind of make them one-dimensional. I like the Kansas City defense to really bother Hurts and maybe get him into a turnover or 2. And I think Kansas City is going to do a good job against the run. So, I kind of like both defenses, so I kind of want to lean towards the under. It's scary because, if you get the Chiefs on the right day or the Eagles on the right day, they could go over just on their side alone. Right, because they have explosive weapons. Both teams can't have the ability in any one game to score. But I have a tendency to think that this game is going to be the Eagles' defense winning and the Chiefs' defense winning. And so I'm kind of leaning towards the under in this game. I don't feel confident on Philly betting that side, but I don't feel confident, on either side. I like the under. I think that's probably how I'll play this game. All right, that's going to do it for us. Kind of a shortened version of today's show. Usually we go for about an hour, but Chase's line was so scratchy that we wanted to end a little sooner. Join me tonight at 6 o'clock for Niners Nightly. Matt Barrows will be in the house. Looking forward to talking a little Niner football with Matty B, who does a great job covering the Niners for The Athletic. We'll probably do a Super Bowl preview video as well with some of these Warren Sharp stats that we really like that we'll go into greater detail on. But thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles for sponsoring this video. And thanks to Mancini's as well for being a proud sponsor of The Krug Show and specifically today's live stream. So thanks to Mancini's for being a proud sponsor as well. And have a great rest of your Friday. Go Niners. And thanks for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Can't